Welcome to another episode of Time Limit, the podcast by TeamGantt that is about making the most of our limited time on projects. All teams have a limited amount of time to work each week, and it's important that we learn to make the most of it. Today, we're going to talk about a bunch of practical tips that managers and leaders can start using today to improve motivation on their teams. First, let's talk about why motivation is important. Nathan, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, motivation, affects everything, I think. So, when we talk about, the limited amount of time we have, I think motivation plays a big role in how effective we are with our limited time. So, I mean, it can have a big difference on the quality of a project, the timing of a project, how quick it gets done, how well it's done. It can affect the morale of the team. It can affect retention and people sticking around and wanting to stay on the team. So I think, it plays a huge role.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think we tend to think of the topic of motivation maybe as kind of like a negative, like turning a negative into a positive. But I kind of tend to look at motivation as sometimes reframing a conversation to get even more out of a situation or a person or a project. So it's not always a negative thing. It's just finding ways of optimizing workflows, building better relationships for a better sort of end product or goal. Mm-hmm. I also tend to think that motivation's a really personal topic. So like what might motivate you, John, might not really motivate me. I always,
Pizza?
Yeah, exactly. Like I always think of in colleges, like I've done a lot of work with colleges where you try to get, user groups together of students and they always offer students free food and it's usually pizza.
Yeah.
And that usually motivates them to be there. And I feel like, yeah, that wouldn't get me there at this point in my life. So it's like, this idea that what motivates one person might not motivate anyone else. But John, what are the types of things that you think kind of help to motivate you?
I think for me, a lot boils down to problem solving and sort of the accomplishment that you feel when you get to the solution. I've always just enjoyed kind of having a difficult task in front of me and figuring out how to solve it, whether it was, going through school and all sort of the math classes with calculus and whatnot. And I think a lot of that like boils into what I do every day now with figuring out how we can take the problem, so to speak, of project management and how we can boil that down to a simple solution for the end user. And, I think too, like I still have some customer interaction and it is always really cool to get a thank you from the customer. That's always a nice sort of motivation where a lot of times we can just do things and then move on to the next. But really sort of seeing why what we're doing and sort of the impact that it has is just such a great motivation for me. And it just kind of, it's a fuel that just keeps the fire going.
Yeah, I don't know how many times I've seen you faced with a problem and your face doesn't leave the laptop until that problem is solved. John will just keep staring at it. And I think a good example is last night. So you were up until 4:00 in the morning last night working on a problem.
Yeah.
And I know that you did not feel like you could go to bed until that problem was figured out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a motivator, like just getting something done, clearing it off your plate.
Yeah, I think like I hate leaving stuff at like 80, 90%.
Yeah.
So just getting to the finish line or at least a solid stopping point is important.
Progress is a huge motivator for me too. Like if I can finish a day feeling like I've accomplished something, I'm then motivated to jump right back to it the next day and feel just as excited about it. Also, I just think for me, it's like general feeling of like happiness. Like I think probably 7 or so years ago, I started to think in terms of my career, like what are the things that motivate me? Like what are the things that I want to do? And I decided it was really simple. It's be happy. Be happy with the work that I'm doing. And that makes me more productive. It makes me want to do that work a lot more. And it motivates me, I think, to do even more. So what about you, Nathan?
That's a good question, Brett. I don't know. I've always been pretty driven. And if I know that there's a goal we're trying to achieve or a mission that we're on, it's something inside of me just keeps eating away until we get there. And a lot of of course, what we do with TeamGantt is kind of like the mission is just ongoing. It'll never end, but it just kind of is constantly, when you see something that could be better, that kind of just gets at me. I'm like, I know we could do this. I know we could, I know that there's room to improve something. And then it's, when you just see that and the potential's there, for me, it's like, let's do it. And that kind of just seeing potential, I think, is something that motivates me.
I think one thing that I've noticed about you too is what you mentioned about goals, right? Like having some goals in mind is going to push you to do even more.
Mhm.
Do you want to talk a little bit about OKRs and how you're setting that stuff up, how you're working with them?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we can talk about that. So one thing we do is we set up the OKRs quarterly, and we do it for certain teams. But the idea is basically just kind of taking the time to think about what is it we want to accomplish for the quarter coming up, and what are those specific goals, and the key results for them, the objectives and the key results. And it's just a really good exercise, if nothing else, to focus on what we're going to be spending our time on for the quarter and what impact that would have on the business. And then we can kind of look at that throughout the quarter to make sure we're getting closer to achieving that. And I think it just helps with alignment and with just in general, so we're all on the same page and we know what to work on and how to prioritize things.
Completely agree. I also think checking in on those goals
Yeah.
and dialing them up or down. Like I think dialing them up is as a motivator, right? Like
Yeah.
setting one number and then you get part of the way and saying, we're going to push that up a level.
Yeah.
See if we can get there. It motivates you to do more because you want to reach that goal.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So it seems like a lot of managers struggle with how to motivate others. So let's talk about some scenarios and ways that you might try to motivate people in some different scenarios. Brett, I'm sure you've probably got some examples over the years.
Yeah, just a few. So I've worked on a lot of projects, either as a project manager or overseeing a team. But I can point back to one project, which was probably my single most challenging project in my career. It was a really big website redesign. It was supposed to be done. It was scoped to be done in 2 years, and it actually took 5 years, which is kind of insane when you think about it. I feel like I could write a book about that project, but because it took so long, over time, the team changed. And then the people who were left behind on the team, from day one, just really started to get tired of it. Like it's like jet lag, right? It's like I cannot continue this. Like I just feel like I'm doing the same thing every day.
Gosh, yeah.
Or just iterating on the same thing over and over again, having the same conversations with different people. So as the PM on that project, it was my responsibility to try to keep people engaged and make people excited about the work that we were doing. Because at the end of the day, it's like, yes, maybe that one product isn't the most exciting thing because it's taken so long due to factors that we couldn't control. But there are things that you can control, like the way that you collaborate on the work, the way that you do the work together, maybe transforming the way you're kind of creating deliverables. Those are the things that I think motivate people, trying to turn a challenge into something that's a little bit more exciting and works for you. But I also think just as a PM, some of the things that I would do to try to engage people, because I think, part of this is lack of engagement because loss of motivation, being really calculated about communications. So I would write a weekly email to the team and I would pepper in some humor just to lighten the mood a little bit, because honestly, like on a project like that, everyone's miserable. Like nobody wants to do it. It's everyone's last priority, but I know what needs to get done. So just like keeping people engaged on like what's happening, but also making light of the situation a little bit.
It's good.
Also as a PM, a big motivator is just being present in your role. I think a lot of project managers tend to want to be behind the scenes and not engage with teams as much. And in that instance, I would stay until midnight with the team if needed, not really having a lot of work to do, but just being there to support. As a developer, I'm sure that you recognize like that's kind of like a nice gesture. Like I'm sitting in a room with 4 developers who are heads down talking to each other every once in a while. And I'm kind of there to play music and order a pizza and, work on some other stuff, but not much with them. So I think that's just having a feeling of like a connected team is a motivator in some way. But I think the only other thing I would say that I did on that project that helped was talking about my team and their work in a really positive way in front of their managers and our clients. So really pushing the fact that, hey, you might see that this project is far behind and way over scope, grossly, but there's really good stuff happening here and really good people who are connected to it. I don't know. I think the more that you can just personalize that kind of situation, the better outcome you'll get and the better people will feel about the work. So.
Yeah. And I think the public recognition or just a compliment. I read something just the other day that said compliment can be more meaningful than a bonus or than money.
Mm-hmm.
Just because they know that, hey, someone noticed, and
Yeah.
then that goes a long way.
Especially because you
in the
don't know
project.
what's going on inside someone's head, right? You could be working on something and I could think, wow, he's doing a great job. Like to you, it's like really difficult challenge. And I'm thinking, oh, this is easy for you.
Yeah, right.
So for me to come to you and say, hey, you're doing a good job, and I just let so-and-so know about it,
Yeah.
that could change your day completely.
Oh yeah. John, I mean, it seems like our dev team is all really motivated. What is it you think keeps them so motivated?
Well, I think it kind of touches on a little bit what we talked about on the last podcast of really hiring and finding the right people. There isn't really anyone on the team that you have to kind of like drag to get something done. Everyone's really eager to jump on anything, and from my end, that's awesome because everyone's such a great team player. We all get along really well, and we all help each other really well. And I think that sort of just the culture of the friendship that's there is a driving force of motivation, because it's you want to be able to help out your friend, or you want to be able to help out your coworker, or it's nice to say,
point.
hey, I'm behind, can someone give me a hand? Like,
Yeah, just making friends with people, being good friends with people, and having a good connection with them.
Mhm.
It does, because you're right. There's something natural about wanting to help out your friends. So another thing is giving people freedom to work on what they want to work on. Within reason, obviously. But if it's if there's a certain goal that needs to be met, and they can figure out how to get to that goal, I think is a pretty cool thing. Like one thing recently is we just we had a marketing meeting end of last year. And we were thinking about what could we do to just generate some buzz. And the idea was like, let's just try and build up our YouTube channel and get more people on there. What could we do? And we threw out a bunch of ideas. And then Michael, who is a senior marketer here, said, yeah, what if we what's just something totally crazy we could do? And it ended up, someone came up with the idea of doing like a little comedy series, like a little webisode series. And they ran with that. And I tell you, I've never, Jamin and Jason have been working on this. And I don't know if I've ever seen people more motivated than them to work on this project. And it's been impressive. And I mean, it was something that they totally came up with themselves. They thought through, I mean, they put tons of work into this, worked crazy hard to just go through, challenge after challenge. And it's really been interesting to watch. And they just wrapped up filming on it. This is something that, I don't think we would have ever said to them, hey guys, let's do this, because we would have thought, nah, it's too big of a project. But since it was their idea, they took it and they ran with it, and they had a ton of freedom to do it how they wanted. And it's been pretty cool to watch this. Yeah, and I think that's kind of the way it is when you get the freedom.
Well, when you're excited about a project the way that they are, you're completely motivated to get it done and do a really great job on it, so that you can continue to have that freedom in some ways to come up with new ideas and do more, because you know that you're supported in that kind of like creativity, which I think is huge. So I think especially for people who are more experienced in their career and don't need as much guidance, giving them some freedom to do work, I think usually yields a better outcome, because they know that they're trusted, and they're working hard to do a great job and show you that they can be trusted.
Yeah. And I think it's, it's having that mentality in the company that it's okay to fail. That it's okay to do something and it not go well. Like doing something like this, even there's no, I mean, there's the time involved, but that's it. There's not a major risk. There's,
right.
if it doesn't go well,
No, that's a really good
the
point.
company will keep on going. That's fine. We tried something and we took a risk, and it was a risk that we can take. And so, we always encourage people to try things, and it's okay if something doesn't work out.
Yeah. Especially if you're learning from those things that don't work out, right?
Yeah.
Like if you can point to something you could have done better or will do better in the future, that's a win.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Nathan, you've mentioned the book Good to Great to me. I have it. I'm ready to read it. But why don't you sort of give us a few of the high points there that tie in with motivation?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that book's one of the classics, one that was actually introduced to a while ago back at the roofing company when we were there, and read it then. And then I still go back and poke into that once in a while. And there's just a lot of great stuff. One of the things they talk about in that is level 5 leadership. So they have these different levels. It's kind of like a progression of how you get to level 5 is start out as a highly capable individual that contributes, then a contributing team member, then a competent manager, then an effective leader, and eventually you hit level 5. That's like the way they describe an ultimate leader. And it's pretty interesting. So in that book, of course, it's a study on some of the best, or really some of the greatest companies. And this was a common thread, was they all had this level 5 leadership. They had some really good points in it. Things like, leaders not taking credit. It's been said, they've got a quote in there, that you can accomplish anything in life provided that you don't mind who gets the credit. And I think that's an important thing as far as motivation goes. You want to be an ambitious leader, but for the institution, not for yourself. They talk about how level 5 leaders are a study in duality. So they're modest and willful, they're humble and fearless. They don't talk about themselves, they talk about their team. And it's just pretty interesting. Good to great leaders were continually described with words such as quiet, humble, modest, shy, mild-mannered. And if something were to go wrong, they will actually look in the mirror and blame themselves, as opposed to trying to blame everybody else on the team. And I think that helps people know that if something goes wrong, people aren't going to come right after them,
Yeah.
And that's also something in Jocko's book about leadership, which is pretty interesting too. He's the Navy SEAL, and he's written a good book, Extreme Ownership. And it's just about, when something goes wrong, the leader has to look at it and say, what did I do wrong here? Not necessarily what did the team do wrong, what did this person do wrong? Because there's a good chance that actually maybe those people weren't set up right. Maybe they didn't have the clear goals. Maybe they didn't have the right tools. Maybe they didn't have the right training. Maybe, as a manager, maybe the manager spread them too thin. There's all kinds of things that can go wrong. And he makes a lot of points about how quite often it's at the leadership level that is where the real issue is. And the leader has to take ownership of it. So I think if that's done well, I think that also can help motivate a team.
Yeah, it feels like that kind of way of thinking and being would remove some kind of barrier that people might perceive, right? To trying new things, getting things done in a different way.
Right. Right.
Just knowing that I can fail and it's going to be okay. It might not always be all on me. Somebody behind me or above me will understand what I'm trying to do and stand by it, which I think is cool. And for me, that would certainly feel like a motivator.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think a lot of what you're talking about totally makes sense. And it feels like a big part of that is explaining the mission of the company or the organization or team or project, whatever it is, which I know that you've done. Like I've been a part of that. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you do that, how you share that mission with employees?
Sure. That's something we do when we have our annual meetup every year where the whole team comes into town. We always carve out a little bit of time for everybody to get together in one room and just talk about that. It's when John and I usually just kind of share, the mission and the vision for the company and why we do what we do. And we want everybody to know in the company like what our mission is, and then they kind of understand. I think when they're every day when they're working, they know why they're working, and that we're all a part of something bigger, and we're all a part of just trying to achieve this very difficult mission.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, TeamGantt's mission is to provide the best project management experience in the world, and we take that really into the day to day. Everything we do. We always sort of keep in focus, like, is this really helping create the best project management experience in the world?
Yep, because that affects everything. It's like what we tell our team is, experience is everything from the support experience they have, every question they have, does it get answered? Can they find it easily in the documents? How are the videos? Do the videos make them happy? Is the design easy to figure out and pleasing to the eye? Code-wise, is everything fast? And
does it actually
speedy?
work?
Does it work? Does it break? Are they getting errors? It's just all this stuff, that it all comes down to the experience, and that's what we're all rallied behind here.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good point to make, in that you can be motivated not just by things that are internal to your organization or your team, but, the many people who see it and who are impacted by it should definitely motivate the way that you do work.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so I think that's a wrap for this episode. Just a quick recap, a couple of things that we talked about. Giving people freedom to accomplish the goals in the way that they want to. Positive encouragement in helping people to meet those goals. Having a clear mission end goals in order to set people up to feel motivated to meet them, and being a humble leader, not blaming others, but looking to yourself first. Thanks again for listening to Time Limit. If you've got any questions or want to leave us a review, we'd definitely appreciate it. You can always get in touch with us at timelimit@teamgantt.com. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you at the next episode.